the first of our two panel discussions today. This one is going to be led by Dr. Emma Wildwood, who is Senior Lecturer in African Christianity and African Indigenous Religions, and also co-director of the Centre for the Study of World Christianity. And Emma is going to lead this panel discussion, which is on the global reach of New College.
Okay, hello to you all, and particularly those online. It's a real pleasure to lead this panel on the global reach of New College, particularly as myself am a graduate 3 times over from the School of Divinity. I have only 34 years of knowledge of this building, and I started as an undergraduate in 1987. After a period of teaching in Congo and Uganda, I returned to do my PhD. I'm delighted that I've got 4 guests with me, 1 alumnus and 3 current postgraduate students, to discuss the global reach of New College, particularly in the present and recent past. But before I introduce them, I'd like to spend just 10 minutes giving you some historic highlights, just a very few, of that global reach. As many of you are no doubt aware, New College has maintained good links with Reformed churches and seminaries, and has had particularly strong links in North America and Europe. Princeton Seminary in the USA and Tübingen University in Germany are just 2 institutions with whom New College has had long connections. And our current faculty boasts a number of colleagues from North America and from Germany. But New College has influenced and been influenced by connections in many other countries as well. In 1867, just after New College building was actually finished and open, Alexander Duff became the first professor of what was then called Evangelistic Theology. It was the first chair in missiology in Britain, and Duff had been the first Presbyterian missionary to India. For over 30 years, he'd involved himself in Indian life, notably developing a new curriculum of English language education with Hindu reformer Ram Mohan Roy. And he also criticised the British government's policy over what was often known as the Indian Mutiny, but he preferred to call it the rebellion, which is a word that's more commonly known today. By the time he taught at New College, he had a comprehensive mission philosophy, which included a willingness to engage intellectually with other cultures and religious traditions. He died in 1878 and was succeeded by Thomas Smith, but the chair lapsed in 1909. This was the year before the important World Missionary Conference in 1910, which was held in the assembly halls next door. Delegates to this World Missionary Conference were senior missionary personnel working in all parts of the globe. And the conference set the agenda for much of Western Christian engagement with the world, although the advent of the First World War in 1914 would dampen some of the optimism expressed at the conference. During the conference, the Senatus of New College gave a dinner for 100 of the delegates. New College hosted another significant international gathering in 1938, the 4th International Congress of Calvinists. The congresses discussed, among other things, what the notion of what a university should be. And from these discussions emerged, amongst others, the Free University of Amsterdam. Americans and Europeans were present at this 4th Calvinist Congress, but so were South Africans, Australians, and New Zealanders. Another prominent mid-20th century visitor to New College was John Gatu of Kenya, whilst he was an intern with the Church of Scotland. Gatu would go on to have an important career, becoming moderator of the Presbyterian Church of Kenya and taking a leading part in global ecumenical and evangelical networks. In 1971, he earned both notoriety and admiration for calling for a moratorium on mission for the Western churches. Now, these historical examples provide us with just a few glimpses into New College's past global engagement. As Brian Stanley, our current Professor of World Christianity, reminded us earlier this year, these moments of interest in the world beyond Scotland did not always succeed in making a local impact. Alexander Duff's lectures did not impress or inspire his students, who found them apparently rather dull. Yong-Chi Ho from Korea, who attended the World Missionary Conference and listened to the Dean of New College's hour-long after-dinner speech, was rather unimpressed. And John Gatu wrote of his visit in 1958, "The Scots did not seem to know much or care about Africa. It did not seem to matter that Ghana had attained independence. No one showed the slightest interest in the freedom movement in Kenya. The only region in Africa that seemed to attract their fancy was Southern Africa. They were preoccupied with the debate on the Central African Federation." Such perceptions of how others see us are surely salutary for those of us engaged in teaching and research in the present. The Alexander Duff tradition was revived in some ways with the appointment of Andrew Ross as the first dedicated lecturer from 1968 to 1998, and continued by Jack Thompson, 98 to 2009. As their student, I can attest that both of them had a vigorous and enthusiastic style of lecturing, very different from that alleged of Alexander Duff. And both had been deeply affected by their years with the Presbyterian Church in Malawi. As David Ferguson has already mentioned, in 1987, Andrew Walls brought from Aberdeen what we now call the Centre for the Study of World Christianity. The centre was intended to educate New College about the vibrant and growing Christian movements outside the Western world and the theologies and spiritualities they had developed in response to different cultural and religious contexts. The study of world Christianity as a corrective to Western discourses and religion has also been a collaborative endeavour with scholars from the majority world, including Kwame Bediako, founder of the Akrofi Christala Institute of Theology, Mission and Culture, who taught here regularly over a number of years, and Marcela Outhouse-Reid, a feminist liberation theologian originally from Argentina, who was on the staff here. And the centre has always welcomed international students who have wanted to study their own Christian traditions, and its alumni are now spread across the globe, leading theological seminaries, teaching in universities, and working for international organisations like the World Council of Churches. But students across the globe are engaged and continue to engage with the full range of subjects available in the School of Divinity. And it's to them that I turn now as part of our panel. They represent, in many ways, the long-term links with New College and some of the newer links. And I'm going to introduce them one by one and let them say a little bit about themselves, and then I'm going to ask them a little bit further questions. So I turn first of all to the Reverend Dr. Elijah Obinna, who graduated from the School of Divinity in 2011 with a PhD in World Christianity. A minister of the Presbyterian Church of Nigeria, Elijah is currently a Church of Scotland minister in Carluke. So Elijah, tell us why you came to New College, what you studied, and who you studied with. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, and everyone for your kind invitation. be a part of this historic moment in the life of New College. My academic journey to New College began in September 2006. The transnational missionary and mutually enriching partnership between Scotland and Nigeria played a huge role in my decision to study at New College. At the start, I studied for a Master of Theology in what was called Christianity in the Northwestern world. Afterward, I enrolled and studied for a PhD at the Center of World Christianity and graduated in July 2011. So July will be 10 years since I left New College. With a particular focus on indigenous manhood initiation and ritual in Southeast Nigeria, my PhD research examined the complex religious identities and practices of Nigerian Christians, balancing mission-influenced Christianity with indigenous traditions and identities. My thesis was published in 2017, I have a copy here, by Routledge Publishers, with the title Identity Crisis and Religious Traditions, Exploring Nigerian African Christian Societies. I studied under the watchful eyes of Professor Elijah Obinna and Dr. Elizabeth Kopi. My first year as a student in New College, I heard for the first time the amazing substance known as snow. And it wasn't long before I learned of two seasons in Scotland. It is raining or it's about to rain. I enjoyed the area of entertainment and sport, including Kelly. Kelly dance was very special, and the abundance of parks and green spaces, including Botanic Gardens, Invalid Park, Upper Seat, Carlton Hill, Princess Garden, as well as Claremont and Portobello beaches. All of these helped and made recreation and reflection easier. Again, the Edinburgh International and Science Festivals were also very helpful to create that space for relaxation. And just to sum up this, New College diverse and welcoming community, the then World Mission Council of Church of Scotland, my church families at St. Stephen's Family Bank, where I served for some years, and St. Giles Cathedral, where I served as an assistant minister for about 2 years, and African and Caribbean Christian Fellowship Edinburgh, offered me homes away from home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll return to you in a minute, but I'd like to introduce our second panellist. Manse Rim is from Korea and in his second year of PhD studies. So again, tell us why you came to New College, what you studied, what you're studying, and who you're studying with.
Good morning, everyone. Mine as will be much shorter. It's great to be here and such an honor to be part of the 175th anniversary of New College. I'm Manse Rim from South Korea and doing my second year of PhD studies at New Testament and Christian origins, concentrating on Pauline epistles, particularly Pauline Christology and Paul's language of righteousness under Dr. Matt Nolan's supervision. I'm a Presbyterian pastor, and my father is also a Presbyterian pastor. So born and raised in South Korea in a Presbyterian church. Literally, I was born and raised in a church. And I was hoping to be a pastor like my father. So when I grew up and I decided to study further, first flew to the United States. So I studied my master's degree at Golden Covenant Theological Seminary. At the time, I met Dr. Matt in Boston in SBL 2017. So I decided to work with him. So I came here 2019 and pursuing my PhD studies here. Of course, Korean Presbyterian Church has a long history, close connection to Edinburgh and New College, and I'm so glad to be here to share the connections between New College and Korean Presbyterian Church. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And again, we'll hear a little bit about those connections in a minute, but to another member of our panel, Ishita Mahajan, is from India and is a first-year PhD student. So Ishita, again, what are you studying? How did you come to New College? What were you doing beforehand? Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Like she said, I'm in the first year of my PhD, kind of nearing the end of it, and I don't know where the time went. So I am working on, my research involves like anthropological inquiry into the question of religious identity and Hindu nationalism in the context of the Kulu Valley in northern India, in the western Himalayan region of North India. And I'm working with Dr. Kumar as my primary supervisor and Dr. Naomi Appleton as my secondary supervisor in the Department of Religious Studies. And I'm here in New College because I wanted to work with Dr. Kumar, and I had been following his work for a while, and I think that with him I got a good supervisory research alignment because his own work focuses on Hindu nationalism and the articulations of Hindutva in the context of Northeast India. And I think here I'm getting a chance to sort of really engage with questions like Hindu nationalism, which perhaps maybe I could not have engaged with the same sort of gravity in India in the current context. And yes, I'm just glad to be part of the New College community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last, but by no means least, we have Jaan Islam, who is from Canada, and he began his PhD in January 2020 in one of our newer subject areas, Islam, Christian-Muslim relations. So again, why did you come to New College? What's your project and who are you studying with?
Thanks everyone, by the way, it's really great to be here on campus physically. It's been like since I came here in January, I only came maybe like 2 or 3 times, so it's great to be back. Yes, so before I started, I did my undergraduate degree at Dalhousie University, which, interesting fact, has a long-standing relationship with the University of Edinburgh. In fact, the campus is physically, like the map and everything is built off of Old College, so there's a long-standing connection there, kind of. I did my master's in political science at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, and yeah, so now I'm here making sort of a transition from political science to divinity and religious studies. I'm studying within the discipline of Islamic studies. I'm studying a movement called Salafism, or a movement which would come to be known as Jihadi Salafism, or Salafi Jihadism. And my thesis is supervised by Drs. Shadab Rahmatullah and Joshua Ralston. And I'm looking at specifically, in the post-9/11 context, there's been tons and tons of research done on this in many different disciplines. What I'm looking at is the jurisprudential and exegetical sort of pre-modern roots of a number of concepts used by the movement. So you have the concept of the caliphate, Sharia, jihad, and what I guess I'm looking at is from a theological or religious studies perspective, what are the origins of these ideas. Where can we trace them back? Of course, there are some ideas of modern import, and there's that, and postmodernism also. But what I'm more concerned with in my thesis is the sort of classical jurisprudential literature and how these concepts developed over time in different regions. I'm also looking, I guess, because of the nature of my subject and my approach, I'm looking at the questions in terms of studying religion generally or studying Islam. What are the preconceptions and I guess assumptions, categories that we assume when we study the subject that I'm studying, and how can we overcome them to have a sort of more nuanced, rich analysis and discussion. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much. Well, it's clear just from 4 students who've studied or are studying their PhDs here, just what a range of subjects that we offer in the School of Divinity, subjects that inform the life of faith communities and the connection between faith communities and the wider society and politics. I'd like to talk a little bit more with Elijah and Rim to start off with about these longer connections, global connections with New College. So you both come from countries and churches with historic links to New College, and I'd really like for you to tell us just a little bit more about those. Let's start with Elijah. You're an author of articles on the Scottish missionary to Nigeria, Mary Slessor, and this year is particularly important for the Presbyterian Church in Nigeria. Could you tell us a little bit more?
All right, thank you, Emma. As Emma has already mentioned, following the mid-19th century missionary activities of Church of Scotland, the Presbyterian Church of Nigeria was established on 10th April 1846. And so this year marks 175th anniversary of the PCN in short. The mission was undertaken through the sponsorship of the United Secession Church and later the United Presbyterian Church UPC. And then of course later on the United Free Church of Scotland, and of course later on the Church of Scotland. So in 1876, 30 years after the mission had been established, Mary Slessor, the White Queen of Okoye, arrived in Calabar as a missionary of UPC and began mission. So she served in Nigeria for 39 years and died and was buried in Calabar. Over these years, there have been many transnational movements of people from Scotland to Nigeria and Nigeria to Scotland. New College has continued to shape and deepen the mission, leadership, and witness of the Presbyterian Church of Nigeria. Between 1988 and 1989, the immediate past prelates from moderator of the Presbyterian Church of Nigeria, His Eminence Professor E.M. Oka, was a Commonwealth Research Fellow at New College. A few years ago, John Orioha, Stanley Okeke, Amarachi Njogo studied at New College, and currently, 2 Presbyterian Church of Nigeria ministers, Joseph Kubra Manuel and Michael Okpara, are studying at New College too. To mark its 175th anniversary, the PCN, like New College, has a series of events and activities to celebrate this worthy milestone. A key part of these activities is the forthcoming publication of the Encyclopedia of Presbyterian and Reformed Witness in Nigeria, which is in short EPAWIN, of which I am the general editor. EPAWIN builds on the book 150th Anniversary, 1846 to 1996, a century and a half of Presbyterian Witness in Nigeria, edited by Professor Ogu Carlo, which was published in 1996. Carlo, until his death on 7 January 2009, was an ordained elder of the Presbyterian Church of Nigeria. And Carlo, as many of us will recognize, was respected internationally as a towering figure in the fields of world Christianity, global mission, African Christianity, and global Pentecostalism. EPAWIN is both historical and contemporary. It will provide an in-depth understanding of mid-19th century missionaries like Mahajan, the pioneering Irish missionary, Mary Slessor. It will also tell the story, I'm sure some of you would have also read about this, the last doctor out of Biafra, who happens to be an elder in the congregation I currently pastor. So she was a missionary in Nigeria, served in the hospital where my mom later worked as a nurse, and also worked in the hospital where our last child was born in Nigeria. And we never heard about the story until we arrived in Kaluk, and we just saw that connection. So the book will tell that story. And I've been asked to say a little bit about Mary Slessor. Emma talks about Mary Slessor. Why Mary Slessor? I've been studying Mary Slessor for a while, and you would like to see this, just a little bit of this. So this is a picture of Mary Slessor carrying twins. She came to Nigeria and served, as I said, for 39 years, died and buried. B.N. Alexander, who is here in the hall, was in Nigeria in 2015 as part of the team from Scotland. There were about 14 of them from Scotland that came to Nigeria, including the then moderator of General Assembly, John Chalmers. So they spent some weeks in Nigeria to be part of the celebration. Mary Slessor worked so hard with the colonial administration to bring to the end the abolition of the killing of twins. So she worked with indigenous people. And myself, my life, and the life of many Presbyterians have been inspired by the work of Mary Slessor. And I suppose this has also provided a bridge, and should provide a bridge between Scotland and Nigeria. I just hope that this World 75th anniversary will provide space for intentional partnership between Nigeria and New College. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elijah. And it's great to hear about another anniversary and these very long-standing connections with New College and with people who studied at New College. And we're going to turn now to Korea. And Manse Rim is going to talk about some of the connections with New College, but also with the wider University of Edinburgh, I think. Over to you.
Okay. Korea, and particularly Korean Presbyterian Church, has a long story with Edinburgh University and New College. It might be good to start with John Ross, a prominent figure who profoundly influenced the early church in Korea. In 1872, John moved to northeast China to serve as a Christian mission. A Chinese missionary. But a few years later, he met Korean traders and saw the possibilities of Christian mission in Korea. However, at the time, the situation was bad because foreigners were not permitted to travel to the land of Korea due to the isolation policy. He therefore learned Korean in China and translated the New Testament into Korean Hangul, the common language for the uneducated people at the time, with the help of some Koreans. In 1887, he completed the first Korean translation of the New Testament and distributed through Korea by the hands of merchants. One of the traders later became an elder, founding the first Korean Presbyterian church, Sore Church. His name is Sang-Yun-Cho. And his brother became one of the first ordained Presbyterian pastors, Kyung-Jo-Seo. After retiring in 1910, he came back to Edinburgh and served Mayfield United Free Church, now Mayfield Salisbury Parish Church in Newington, as an elder. Until now, many Christian leaders and biblical scholars of Korea have admired him and appreciated his work and love for Korea. And many articles and theses on his translation work and mission have demonstrated the significance and contribution he made of it. His legacy will be continually remembered in South Korea. Around that time, although it was not a direct connection to New College, there were some people who were politically and socially important in the society of South Korea. In 1910, Chi Ho-yoon, a political activist for the Korean independence, visited Edinburgh and attended 1910 World Mission Conference, known as Edinburgh Conference, as a delegate. In 1915, Taeksang Jaan, the third Korean Prime Minister, studied at the University of Edinburgh, but he was unable to complete his degree. In 1930, Ho Sun-yoon, the fourth Korean president, graduated with a Master of Arts in Archaeology. These are all long connections we have.
Great, thank you very much for those connections. And now we're going to move, we've heard about these long-standing connections between Edinburgh University, New College, and Korea and Nigeria, just a representative sample. We could choose other parts of the world as well, but now we're going to turn to our other two panelists. And, you know, as we celebrate the 175th anniversary of this building, we also want to look forward to know what we're doing in the present and in the future. And this building for many years has been associated with the training of people for Christian ministry. But you are both studying other religious traditions. What does it mean for you to study here, and what do you gain from studying in New College? Ishita.
So, like I mentioned earlier, studying at New College does give me this sense of freedom to engage with questions around in Hindu nationalism and what Hindutva and Hinduism, these ideas actually mean, and develop them further develop an understanding of these questions. And being here means being in a space where I can sort of really think about these thoughts without feeling like I'm feeling hindered or anything. Because I think these questions are important considering the current social political context of India, where the ideas of Hindu majoritarianism are on the rise. I mean, you don't have to look very far when you see in the current pandemic situation that we had, the recent peak in India in terms of COVID-19 cases and how it was handled at the state. That, and not only that, but the way the state targeted criticism of handling the pandemic, and beyond that, the general growing religious intolerance and silencing of questions, criticism by students like me, by activists and researchers. So I think these questions at this time are important. Of course, a similar debate is also happening within India, but I think being here gives me an opportunity to sort of engage in more depth, but also in a wider range by placing myself in this sort of wide community of intellectuals who are just discussing different aspects of not just Hinduism and nationalism, but also religious studies in general, right? So I was just discussing with Dr. Weil yesterday that I just love it how I'm part of this community, despite the lockdown that we have been in for the last few months. And I was able to discuss so many different things with people from so many different disciplines. For instance, I have in my own little circle a friend who's studying transhumanism and artificial intelligence, a friend who's studying Shincheonji in South Korea, a friend friend who's studying digital cultures in Ghana, and then there's Jaan as well, who studies Salafism and Mahajan. So the idea is that the discussions are ongoing, and I get to sort of place my own ideas in this broad discussion. And being in New College, obviously, also I've been able to discuss things with other centers affiliated with New College, like the Center for South Asian Studies. So it has been a very, very interesting experience for me in terms of developing new ideas and exciting possibilities. And to add with that, I think I was also able to audit courses which I was interested in, especially, I'm mentioning this because I got a chance to be in this course called Indigenous Futures, where we were discussing indigenous religious traditions and traditions in general across the globe and in their local context, but also in their international sort of representation in, say, the United Nations. And I think that these kind of discussions helped me rethink aspects of religion and in terms of it, knowledge production, remembering knowledge and having memory collectively, individually, and also your relationship with nature and the environment. And I think these are very, very important questions as we're looking towards the future, and if we're discussing past, present, and future. I think we're at the right place right now in terms of what kind of questions we're looking forward to. And I think I'm just very, very grateful that I am here at this moment and I'm able to sort of take it all in. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ishita. Jaan.
Yes, I actually like that question because it made me sort of ask myself why I wanted to come here. I think one of the things to say first about the history of studying global religions, Islam also here at New College, is that even back in the second half of the 19th century, there are a number of significant scholars who studied of Islam and other traditions as well, but William Moore comes to mind, and how the field of Islamic studies established by Orientalists in the West have, it's been, Edinburgh has been one of the central places for that. Fast forward all the way to today, we have the Walid bin Talal Center for Islamic Studies, of which I think there are only two in the UK, Cambridge and here. And so, it hosts a number of important conferences, great scholars, of course. And I think that in terms of choosing Edinburgh and coming to the UK, that's one of the reasons I wanted to be here, because it's still at the forefront of all of this, of the study of Islam. In terms of the subject I'm studying, as you know, it's sort of a touchy subject, and there are a lot of sensibilities and even hostilities that go around these sorts of issues, especially in a post 9/11 context. So when I looked at Edinburgh, I saw two things. One is the opportunity to take a critical approach, which maybe wouldn't be as possible in other places. And I think specifically in terms of, we're talking about decolonial approaches to the academy, to religion, and Edinburgh is one of the places I think that's been leading that, and there are a lot of critical sort of theorists and scholars, and who are beginning to question a lot of the categories that we have and the sort of assumptions and biases and everything that go into our research, just like in any other field, right? And I think that Edinburgh is one of the places I can really propose, new nuanced studies, and that is going to be welcomed here. And then from there, I can sort of spread that through, all the great institutions and research centers to, the rest of the world.
Great, thank you very much. And now I'd like to call upon those of you in the Rainey Hall and particularly online for your connections. What do you know about the global reach of New College? Perhaps you're joining us from outside Edinburgh, and you'd like to pop in the chat your own memory or a connection that we haven't included in this short panel. So please be typing that in the chat, and I hope I'm going to be able to see the chat in just a minute. But I'd like to thank my panelists today for just being part of this event, but also just giving us that snapshot of the global reach of New College and the way that New College has influenced the lives of people, but also the way in which the community here has been profoundly influenced by connections across the globe. So thank you very much to Elijah, to Manse, to Ishita and to Jaan for joining me here, and please do let us have some more memories or connections with the world beyond Edinburgh. And if there are things in the chat, I can't actually see them at the moment, so I'm hoping someone might shout them out. No, nothing.
I can say a little bit.
Yeah,
newer things between Korea and New College.
Please do.
There are more than hundreds of PhD alumni of New College. Some of them is working in an academic field. Others working as a pastor in South Korea and in the United States and all over the world. So, to my knowledge, I could name a few, those who have worked in the academic field as a professor or a scholar in South Korea. Professor Dok-Kwan Koo at Methodist Theological University, Professor Jadok Choi, and Professor Unu Lee, and Jusuf Kum at Presbyterian University and Theological Seminary, Professor Jongjun Kim at Yonsei University United Graduate School of Theology, Professor Samuel Pang at Yonsei University, and Professor Byung-ho Moon and Jeonu Hwang at Chongshin Theological Seminary, Professor Chung-Yup Ha at Sungsil University, Professor Jagan Lee at Hwangsin University, and so forth. There are a lot who studied here and now teaching biblical studies or systematic or history theology in South Korea. And supposedly a lot more people have served at a local church as a pastor. So to give you one example, Reverend Moon-Jang Lee, sometime associate professor at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary in the United States, and later at Trinity Theological College in Singapore, is now actively serving at Seong Church in Korea as a senior pastor. And I happen to know that he taught here at New College. You were a student, when you were a student. So, now we have 3 PhD students, including me, and 2 master's students. So many Koreans really hope to study here at the birthplace of Presbyterian. And probably the history will be expanded and continually, I think.
Thank you very much, Manse. That's really good to remind us of those connections, and also to remind me of Moon-Jang Lee, who I think was the first person I encountered when I started my PhD studies. So he and Marcella kind of led the induction group that week. Do we have any in the chat?
Yes, I'll just share some reflections. So this one's from Eileen Lavelle, and she says that Father Noel often came to Sunday lunch with us at home in Belluno. Have vivid memories of Professor Forrester dancing a Scottish foursome with me in kilts while on the college retreat in Argyll. And we have another reflection from David Ferguson. Yes, both Duncan and Noel were great participants in community life at New College, especially at the Bronx Kai weekends at Pitlochry. Duncan would lead us to the top of the Schleichelion at a brisk pace, leaving the party strung out across the mountainside. From this grant, we've got what excellent comments from the 4 panelists. Thank you for this, and so important to have recognised the impact of Professor Andrew Walls, a global leader who encouraged so many past students and whose legacy lives on in the work of many current students, along with the inspired insights of Brian Stanley. And Liz has just added to that the shift in thinking that New College inspired, which pushed the boundaries of Christian theology, is important. New College encouraged us to understand the power of listening to multiple perspectives and the possibility of building up a collective and shared yet intentionally context-specific understanding of the Christian faith.
Okay, thank you very much for those comments. So this, if there are no comments from the floor here, this brings our session to a close. Again, thank you to the panelists and thank you to those who commented in the chat.